We did not have a spoiler-free conversation.
None of our episodes ever are spoiler-free. Maybe one day when we have sponsors and a huge audience and ad breaks, we will do a spoiler-free section and a non-spoiler-free section. But hear me when I say we are not there yet, and we will spoil it from the top. Welcome back to the Be Mean Fast Forward podcast. My name is Kat Solko.
My name is Charlie Jake Sanchez. I've seen a lot of movies.
And I have not.
And we are here
to discuss our newest double feature episode of Be Mean at the Movies. It is A Complete Unknosferatu.
A Complete Unknosferatu.
People are gonna come up with worse and worse
just it's gonna keep going, and we're part of it.
And I'm so excited.
Yeah, I think it was Nicholas Hoult who coined it in the pop culture sphere.
Okay.
However, I think I
coined it in my brain.
Okay, it was me. It was me in the movie theater reaching over to you and saying, "A complete Unknosferatu."
No. We have talked about this, and we both think that we separately coined the phrase "A Complete Unknosferatu." And for the sake of our relationship, we are both right.
Was it? Now, here's the thing. If we both came up with it, then it sounds like it was part of the collective consciousness already. It sounds like many people
easy
are
pun.
doing it. Yeah, exactly. It's an easy pun, and we like easy puns. So what are you going to do?
We're easy.
Anyway, back to the double feature at hand, A Complete Unknosferatu. Kat, set the scene for us. Where, when, how, why, wherefore?
It's Christmas Day. We go to Universal City Walk. I am reminded how much I dislike large crowds of people.
Mm-hmm. A lot of people.
So many people. And we start with A Complete Unknown.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
What time? Oh, it was like 8 p.m.
Yeah, it was like 8 o'clock.
And then we saw Nosferatu at like 11:30.
11:15, 11 night. Yeah.
So it was a long evening. I think we napped beforehand.
Yeah, we may have napped. And
we opened presents.
Yeah, we opened presents. We had a whole Christmas day. It was fun. We had a good time. But when it came down to it, it's been a long movie week, and we'll talk more about that later.
We found your threshold.
Yeah, we found my threshold, which is basically 24 hours of movie in a week.
He watched a lot of movies, some that are in upcoming episodes, and he's so excited about that. And these two. And then at the end of the week, he went, "You know what?" And I was like, "You want to watch a movie?" He was like, "For the first time, I think in your life," you went, "I think I'm okay."
What are you talking about at home?
Uh-huh.
Oh yeah, and then we just watched TV. I think we watched *Handmaid's Tale* or *Gilmore Girls* or something.
*Gilmore Girls*.
It got out of hand. It got a bit out of hand. We did the double feature of *Glicked*, going into first showing for me of *Brutalist*, second showing for me of *Brutalist*, third showing, which was our showing.
Charlie's watched a 4-hour movie 4 times this week.
Yeah, I've watched 20. I think we did the math. It's like 24 to 25 hours of movie.
Which is apparently
all told
as much as he can do for now.
Yeah.
You know?
In 10 days.
It's like when I was trying to find my threshold of caffeine. Mm-hmm. So I drank 4 espresso shots, and then I had a Celsius, and I wasn't more awake than normal, but I did feel like I was going to have a panic attack.
I don't know how you can do that. The Celsiuses, if I have one of those Celsiuses, I'm having a heart attack.
Yeah.
That's what happens when you night bartended for so many years.
Yep.
You needed to do stuff like that. Okay.
Thank God we're out of that.
So, back to A Complete Unknown.
Yeah.
Right?
You are a big Bob Dylan fan.
Huge Bobby D fan. Always been since I was a teenager. That was my guy.
Me personally, not so much. I never liked how he sounded, to put it mildly.
You and a lot of people.
I just wish he would sing the notes of his songs.
And guess what? I never noticed. I could tell obviously that his voice was unique. However, I couldn't tell that he wasn't singing the right notes or hitting the right. I don't know.
He got like approximately around the right notes all the time.
Queen Jane, approximately. Anyway, it's a Bob Dylan reference.
I don't know that.
So we go to A Complete Unknown, and I would have loved to have Kat watch Inside Llewyn Davis and I'm Not There, the Bob Dylan movies made by the Coen. Inside Llewyn Davis is like the movie that's about Bob Dylan that technically doesn't have Bob Dylan in it. I will leave that open-ended. So we didn't watch either of those movies, I'm Not There and Inside Llewyn Davis, before watching this.
No.
So, and I think we'll get into it a little bit later, but I think let's talk about like the how you felt about the movie itself.
The Complete Unknown.
The Complete Unknown.
I had completely no information about Bob Dylan.
Truly did not.
So my first thought when I was watching the movie was like, there's no conflict. Like, he goes to New York, gets to play for Woody Guthrie and Paul Siegel?
Pete Seeger.
Pete Seeger. Sorry, Pete. And then they just go, oh, wow, okay, great. Yeah, let's get you a live mic night. Let's get you a record deal. Let's get you a famous song. Let's get you fame. It's like nothing stood in his way other than like his own ego, I guess. But the story wasn't really about that. So it was just an interesting way of telling a story about a man who seemingly like had no hardship doing a very, very hard thing, which is like becoming a successful folk singer.
Right.
So in that way, I was like, But I didn't know that was the story of Bob Dylan. So for me as a first-time viewer, I guess like I was still kind of locked in. However, I don't think that it really like broke my brain open in any way. Okay. It just sort of felt like, a very well-made biopic that I've seen a lot. I've seen many times.
Right, of course. Since watching the movie, you have seen Inside Llewyn Davis, right? And in Inside Llewyn Davis, Carey Mulligan has that line where she calls him King Midas's idiot brother. And that's because Bob Dylan was King Midas. Everything he touched turned to gold. And so the lack of conflict is an actual lack of conflict within the story itself, the true story of the mythology of like how this guy came to be. Now, he did, he had his bona fides in that he shows up and he's this kid from Minnesota. And you find out later that his name is Robert Zimmerman and he comes from a middle class. As if you couldn't tell before, Bob Dylan was Jewish.
I didn't know.
So he shows up and, he comes from this middle class background, but he keeps, talking about the carnival and playing at the carnival and kind of giving like inventing his own background.
Right.
And when he was on the come up, he was participating in civil rights marches and union, picket lines and things like that. So it's not like he didn't earn the bona fides of what the community that he was part of, which I think is what obviously he was a massive talent to show up on the scene like that. And he earned the respect from the people because he was a massive talent, but also because he did participate. And so that dynamic makes for a lack of drama.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you're reacting to is this lack of drama within story.
I think what I'm reacting to is just like a unclear motive to make the story, to like make the movie, basically. Is it, I guess, so I don't really know Bob Dylan's story more than I just watched it, but he's apparently a very unknowable person, right? Like he doesn't do interviews. Is that true or?
Well, the whole thing was like he was very vague with his. It's in the movie. I mean, he's incredibly vague with everybody in his life about his past. Sylvie has that argument with him where which I think her name was Susie in real life, but his first wife, and she has that argument with him where she's just like, why don't you talk about your past? And he's like, people make up their past, Sylvie. Like their life is what they want it to be, basically. And
right.
So that,
So that's saying something. And I almost wish that they
pursued that line of thought a little bit more, you know?
To me, the thing about it is there's this expectation. There was this expectation on Bob Dylan as the artist. And this movie is about the expectations put on him by the folk community. It essentially is what the movie turns into. The purpose of the movie is actually to kind of zoom in on the beginning and the end of the folk scene when he was a part of it. And him basically killing an element of it because of the expectations people were putting on him. And so the thing about it is like the movie isn't interested in those expectations because the artist is not interested in those expectations. And I think that's what the movie is trying to do by not delving necessarily too deep in that stuff. And I've heard people talk about this movie being less of kind of like a digging into the artist instead of you're experiencing the artist. And I think that's true, but I think part of that dissatisfaction is experiencing Bob Dylan. I think it is a little unsatisfying to experience him and be like, wow, what else is there? And he was constantly dealing with the press. The press was antagonistic towards Bob, but Bob was very antagonistic towards the press.
Yeah.
And would specifically, he would have said something previously, they would try to take it out of context and quote him, and he would spin it a different way because he was fed up with the weight of everything that people were putting on him. Now, whether that was fair or whether he had to answer for those things, he was just not interested in that. And so I think that is something that the movie does really well is showcase that dissatisfaction is, I think, a part of the actual story of Bob Dylan.
Okay, that's fair enough. Yeah, I liked all the little elements separately and some of them together, but I think maybe all of them together. I don't know if I'm going to rewatch this movie.
Fair enough. Yeah, fair.
I don't think I need to. I think I got everything that it was trying to do the first time. And I usually don't say that about movies. I can always feel like I can get something new out of it. And this one, I genuinely don't think I can, and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's a one and done movie.
Yeah.
So it's just more because I don't have the nostalgia for Bob Dylan or like the fan base for Bob Dylan. It's more just like being confused about like, why are people obsessed with him? More than other prolific singers of our American day, you know?
Now, do you think, because as a fan watching this movie, I am also a little unsatisfied by it. I think I'm Not There is probably as close to a perfect Bob Dylan, and Inside Llewyn Davis. Those are probably close to two perfect Bob Dylan movies. Inside Llewyn Davis, like I said,
but he's not Bob Dylan.
He's not Bob Dylan, right? But that movie is about the folk scene instead of Bob Dylan, like the people around who didn't quite make it. And it says so much about Bob Dylan by covering this other person. It's an amalgamation of different people, but mostly Dave Van Ronk, part of the folk scene. And these people who just like got real close and didn't have whatever it was in the moment. And now the movie does, I think, a really great job of showing why Bob was, I think it does as good a job as you possibly can showing why Bob showed up and everyone was like, holy shit, what is this guy? That, to me anyway, is that they're talking about it in the movie about like everyone kind of using the folk songs, like the old folk songs. And Bob comes along, he's got original material.
Right.
And he's writing all the time. And he's coming up with new standard folk songs, like the folk songs that would last for the next 100 years or whatever. And so that to me is why I think people were so stoked by it, because the folk scene had already kind of blown up after the 50s sound that was more conventional.
Yeah.
And folk came in, it was a little dirtier, it was a little grimier, it was a little more realistic. And so when Bob comes in and comes up with those songs that are new, I think that was I think the movie tries to communicate that the best it can. in that when he Sylvie's like, you should, or maybe it's Joan or Sylvie is just like, you should
Sylvie,
record that. And he does. And it's the thing that kind of really blows him up, the second album in particular. So I think that's why, if I can best explain that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, so I hate to keep talking. Maybe.
No, keep going. This is your thing. You're obsessed with this guy,
that there was a lot of anxiety around this movie, I think, by any fan of Bob Dylan. And it was because he's unconventional. He's not, it's hard to cover him like this because you are going to feel like, okay, I didn't get to know that guy because he didn't want you to know him. Like, it's like he was constantly transforming through the decades into a different thing. He was like the ultimate chameleon as an artist. And we haven't really talked about the later stuff, but at one point he gets into Jesus, and he gets into more bluesy style, and he gets into more, he was constantly reinventing himself. And that is the story of Bob Dylan throughout the decades. And so a lot of people had anxiety about this movie, I being one of them. But I was also like, look, we have I'm Not There, which is a complete, metaphorical tale of Bob Dylan.
Yeah.
Where it's, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's like 7 versions of Bob Dylan in there, played by different actors. And inside Llewyn Davis, like we said, a version of the story told from a different perspective, kind of. And so we have those movies. We have the documentaries. There's a massive treasure trove of Bob footage over the years that I kind of like opened up to the movie before I even saw it in a way that went, you know what? I'm down for a conventional version of this story.
Sure.
Now, did I love it? I liked it a lot. It was quite a good movie.
Yeah.
But like you, I'm just a little left cold by it, and that's totally fine.
Maybe that's the point.
Yeah.
But it's just an interesting version of a movie to make, Because
Yeah.
it's not... I understand that the filmmaker doesn't want to judge Bob Dylan in
He
certain
judges him
ways.
pretty hard. I mean, it's the way that he deals with the women in his life, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Pete Seeger. I mean, ultimately what Bob had to do was the right move for him. But Pete needed that.
Yeah.
Pete, his guy, you know what I mean, who like supported him the whole time, who you can see him in real time realize that he's not the chosen one. That guy is. I mean, Edward Norton is so good in this movie.
Yeah,
we could talk about the performances, I think, a little bit now.
Yeah.
But that element of him really struggling
Yeah.
with that, and
With
it's
what
all
folk is
looks
turning
for the
into.
most part. It's all looks. And
Yeah.
Pete, Bob is doing like a Rolling Stone, and he's Highway 61 Revisited. I can't remember what it is. And then it cuts to Pete on that program, and he's like, well, everybody, welcome back to the da-da-da-da. And it's like, oh shit, Pete's doing this?
Yeah.
It's very quaint, and it's very cool. It's great what Pete did. His activism throughout his entire life should be commended. But yeah, Bob kind of shivved him at one point. And
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also like, it's the age-old conversation of like keeping things pure to their core and allowing them to evolve and survive.
True. Yeah.
So I wish they had explored that a little more, but in Pete's story, in himself, like, because he's defending Bob's like evolution of folk. But then to Bob, he's like, "Can you just play the acoustics one more time?" Like, so like, what's the thought? Like, what's the through line?
Yeah, and I think that is exactly why Bob was like, no, because what are you trying to say? Like the one more time, like what difference does it make?
Right.
To anything if I do that one more time? It's an interesting dynamic. That specifically, that scene. It's maybe the best scene in the movie because it is a scene.
Yeah.
And the movie lacks at times scenes.
Yeah. I just wanted to understand all the characters a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I think the closest I got was probably Pete.
Yeah.
But I am a little bit tired of seeing like the women in these movies be just like the person that he happens to be having sex with at the time, and that he like treats Joan Baez at one point like actual garbage multiple times, not just one point.
Multiple times.
Actual garbage. And she's like, you're kind of an asshole, Bob. I like that. Like, she's like, she doesn't give a shit, you know? Like, he says that her songs are like
the hotel room
eventually,
at that one point.
yeah. But he says her songs are like watercolor art at the dentist's office.
Oil painting at a dentist's office,
like, you're kind of an asshole. Anyway, what are you writing? Like, come on, just give anyone a little more backbone. I understand that they don't put up with it forever. Either of the women, like Sylvie leaves and Joan kicks him out. And, you know, there's rejection there. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, I find myself still frustrated by the scenes where he just gets to be a complete dickhead and like no one does anything about it.
It's a massive part of the documentaries is like him being an asshole and just like kind of getting away with it to the point there's like long takes in the Don't Look Back documentary where he's kind of giving it to this kid who came to interview him.
It's a documentary?
Don't Look Back is a documentary. Don't Look Back, No Direction Home.
Wait, I'm not
Review.
there. Okay, there's a lot of three-word titles.
He's incredibly well documented as an artist, except for this type of movie. Mm-hmm. And in those movies, in those documentaries, there are scenes where he is kind of like drilling down on someone and really fucking being cruel at times. And so it's part of the whole thing. And it was like people let him to a degree. There were people who would give him shit back. And one of the scenes I'm talking about, the kid is giving him shit back. But it was just the way, still the way that people, I think, treat artists, but Bob being what he was at the time. The Joan Baez thing is interesting because you see, everyone's seen the footage basically of her and him. And they're talking about like why each of them got married and everything. Because she is like putting him in his place, but she's also smiling the whole time and laughing at him. And kind of like, you know, I think the relationship was complicated. Yeah. It was like she had a lot of complicated feelings about it, where she just she really like adored him in a lot of ways, and yet were
they both married at that time?
In that video that we're talking about, the red wine and ticker tape and salad one. That's no, I don't think so.
Neither of them are married at that point?
I think so.
Because they both talk about having been married.
She's divorced. I think it's
and he's
implied.
Not?
Yeah, I think so. Or
he's
no,
divorced as well?
I think he's divorced as well, or he's with someone else, or who knows what it was. But yeah.
Yeah, no, it is a very fascinating relationship. I think my issue is more with like women in biopics.
The movies in general. I mean,
like women in biopics have absolutely nothing to do besides take their clothes off and like bicker with the guy. You know, like it's so frustrating because Joan Baez was such a huge like character in her own right. And I feel like maybe the movie tried, like I will give it that the movie tried to give her own like autonomous story. However, maybe that's the story, is that it just got subsumed by Bob Dylan's story, you know?
Mm-hmm. Right.
In general.
I was actually surprised at how much shrift she was given in the movie, actually, considering the subject matter and everything. And at certain points, it is performance. It's like Joan Baez is performing by herself at times and with Bob. And obviously it gets annoying when, you know, it's all just like women looking at Bob, and that's the movie, basically. But that was kind of like the reality of life at a given point in time. And so I agree with you, though. The Maestro thing is interesting because that's what I've heard comparison with Maestro last year. But she got a lot more to do, I thought.
Yeah, and I think it was way more critical of Leonard Bernstein than this movie is of Bob Dylan.
The thing is, it's like...
But maybe he's more of an understandable character.
The movie is critical of Bob Dylan, but in the end, as with reality, people were just like, yeah, but he's so fucking cool. That was like, that's how it comes out in the wash, like, unfortunately. And so I think that it's heartbreaking, though. I think the Pete Seeger part of this
that one
is incredibly heartbreaking.
Great story,
and an incredible approximation. But it really distills down, the movie distills down into the lyric that I forgot when in the movie he's trying to write it, but it's the It's All Right, Ma, I'm Bleeding, I think is the song. And he says, he not busy being born is busy dying, or he not busy being born is dying. And that idea, that concept, was the reason why he was like, no, I'm not going to do it again.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go out there and do the thing again because I'm not going to die on stage, basically.
Yeah, well, I think
As
it's
an artist, I'm
also
not
like the
gonna die.
point of that scene was the crux was like, but you didn't even listen to my new songs.
Right.
You just don't want them on your stage because they're new.
Yeah.
And you don't even know if you like them or not. You know, like you haven't heard them. What if they're amazing? What if this is what folk is going to become, which eventually it is. So like that is, I think, what solidifies his decision. Maybe he would have given Pete like a little bit more grace in that moment if he'd been like, I listened to it and they're great, but I just don't think they belong in this one folk festival.
Yeah.
Then he would have been like, all right, for you, you know, I will do this for you, whatever. But he didn't listen to that. Like it's about just the idea that Bob's doing something different and not the quality of what it is.
Yeah.
That he like pushes against, obviously. And I like that. My favorite line from the movie is in that scene where his agent is like, so, oh man, I'm going to paraphrase it, but it's like, you know, we're up there selling light bulbs and you're hawking candles. Like,
right.
You can't push candles when we got light bulbs. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And it's a little on the nose because they're going from like acoustic to electric. But I like it because it distills like it's
a good turn of phrase.
That's what candle makers were up in arms about when light bulbs were invented. Sorry, but we use light bulbs now. Yeah. Candles are great for nostalgia and mood setting, but for the most part, we run on light bulbs, and it's the same for music nowadays.
That scene is so great. There's a part that's going to get completely buried, I think, in this movie, and it's where he's like kind of like dismissing Al Cooper as soon as he comes in and then he does the organ on Rolling Stone. I was dying knowing like the background and everything, and just seeing it in real time play out was such a beautifully staging of that scene. But then when they're in the room previously, he sees Al wearing that polka dot shirt, and he's like, "Take it off. You look like a clown, man." Like, and then he, in that scene where he's talking to Pete Seeger, puts on the shirt. And it's this incredible distillation of this guy kind of just at the same time as like putting people down, stealing their shit at the same time.
Yeah.
And this feeling that would eventually override what came out of the Bob Dylan Going Electric was like people being like, whoa, was he a phony the whole time? Mm-hmm. Was it a front? Was it an act? Did he actually care?
Kind of, right?
And to a certain extent, yes, but his argument would be, well, why can't I be that?
Right.
I've decided it. And so that's the whole thesis of the movie. But that scene, I found that to be so funny and so under, it's not commented on at all.
No.
He just throws it on, and that's what he's going to wear to the concert. And so
no, he doesn't wear it to the concert.
Does he not?
No.
Oh, okay, never mind.
No, he doesn't. But he is wearing it in that scene. It's really interesting that he just picks it up, puts it on to listen to Pete.
It's like he's stealing it, but also does he feels like he's to play the clown or something like it.
Or he feels like this is a ridiculous scenario, so he might as well look ridiculous or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And I never wanted to be a musician for many reasons, but one of them is like you get maybe 10 good years, and like 2 or 3 people get like 20 good years, and then you've done your thing. People get tired of the sound, but then if you try to change your sound, you're being a phony, or you're not. People don't want to hear that shit from you. Like whatever it is, it doesn't sound right to their ears. It's just such a interesting struggle because you can always pick a 10-year decade of an artist's career where they're like up, they are at the height of what they're ever going to do. The exceptions being maybe like Madonna, maybe, even though her height was the 80s, and then she's managed to continue to tour because she has boundless energy, but she is singing her songs from the 80s mostly. So like Bob Dylan had the 60s, 70s, right?
Well, the 70s is like, I think, widely considered within the community of being his best output.
Okay, gotcha.
Like Blonde on Blonde, Blood on the Tracks. But what is fascinating about this, is I think, hot take, Bob Dylan invented the era, the artist era, like changing and having a different era with a different album or, you know, a run of albums, let's say. And so it's like all that stuff that goes on today with Taylor, with all these pop stars. Bob was doing that. He was introducing like a new version of himself all the time.
Yeah.
And so that is where, you know, the timeless nature of a lot of those records comes into, because he was evolving. And I think that's kind of like the unspoken part of it. Like,
I also think that, I mean, this is not a thought that I've like made intellectual whatsoever, but it seems almost easier to be timeless when you're singing Americana in America. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Folk songs, like you said, were standards that people just covered over and over and over again because they kept being popular. Covers kept being popular. I think the covers that really last nowadays are Americana folk songs redone.
Right.
So it might be both, is what I'm saying. It might be like his prolific nature and like being able to change and adapt, but also him writing kind of like, for lack of a better word, like Americana anthems, you know? I think anthems are what tend to survive past like 30 years. Because it's like a foundational music style for
That's
our
interesting, because I wouldn't call some of those songs anthems is the thing. Like, they're complicated in nature, a lot of them. Maybe like the more popular ones, but I feel like that work after that was complicated. So I don't know if anthem is the right word for it. But maybe I'm just like getting caught up on the semantics of the word. Yeah. I agree with you on the Americana point. I think that essentially you're creating it's in a timeless structure a bit, and so therefore it lasts forever.
Yeah, it's like a blues structure. It's like the blues structure will always be around. So whatever blues song you write is probably going to become a classic because it's a blues song, or it's at least going to invoke a feeling of like nostalgia that
that's
people are like, oh, I'll listen to this because I know vaguely what it's gonna sound like.
I know what it's making me feel like.
Yeah,
it's it's evoking the spirit of America or something. But yeah, so okay, I think. What, do you want to talk about the performances anymore? Or?
Everyone did great.
I mean,
I have criticisms about structure and maybe story, but like everyone did.
That's
popped their Bob Dussies all over this place, okay? Bob Delussies.
That is actually the great strength of the movie, is that the performances are so fucking good.
Yeah.
Every single
and you can tell that
performance.
Timmy like studied, you know, like just is an expert at everything he was trying to do. Everything he did was very intentional.
Yeah.
So no critique whatsoever.
Not at all. I have no critique for anyone in the movie. I thought the performances were stunning, frankly. They're like, everyone's smoldering every single second that they're on screen, you know. And so yeah, I like the movie a lot. I think it's probably as best you can do doing a movie like this about Bob Dylan.
Yeah, exactly. I just think Bob Dylan's generally unsatisfying. So
to you.
To me. That's what I said, I think. So then, you know, it's just another, I'm learning, right?
Yeah, there's like a ceiling for this type of thing.
But there is a ceiling of like, okay, if there's only so much I can learn about this person because that's all they're allowing me to learn, then that's it. That's all I'll learn.
About this section, I think you'd be very interested in like the later, in like him adapting.
I'm going to definitely watch the movie you want me to watch.
Yeah.
We'll do it.
Probably get a lot. I think I'm Not There we'll definitely cover on the show. Inside Llewyn Davis was nice to kind of have as this backdrop to, or, you know, this thing to play it off of against, which was this guy who just didn't have it.
Yeah.
Or he had it, but
Bob
it just
Dylan's
wasn't the right
asshole, but
timing.
he had it, and this guy was an asshole and he didn't have it, and that's even worse.
Yeah. It's Inside Llewyn Davis is such a great movie, and who knows, maybe we'll cover it on the pod one day, maybe not. Sounds like you're kind of iffy on it.
I mean, we could do. Listen, we're gonna have lots of episodes of this podcast.
It's true.
We'll be 80 years old in front of these cameras and going. All right, now it's time to talk about Llewyn Davis.
Let's talk about Blade Runner 2900. So, yeah, that might be a guest episode with the Inside Llewyn Davis. Like, we'll have a guest on for that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
then we took a break. We got a terrible burnt coffee at this donut shop. It was the last cup of coffee they had in their little pot that probably had been sitting there for 8 hours. Yeah. It was delicious. We chugged it, and then we saw Nosferatu. Charlie, what are your thoughts about Nosferatu in general?
In general, the concept of Nosferatu?
Overall, yeah. What do you think about sucking blood? I'm asking for
generally
a friend.
Generally pro,
Oh.
I think.
I gotta tell my friend about that. Continue.
Oh. What are they called? What are the women called who are like Dracula's women? What are they called?
Brides,
the brides, I guess.
I think. I don't know. I don't know lore like that.
Okay, so
Edward and Bella.
Nosferatu. Overall, I like Robert Eggers. I have not seen The Lighthouse. I'm saving it. I haven't watched it because I'm saving it for the pod. Somebody's going to come on and guest, and we'll do that on the show. However, I am often left a little cold by his movies. I quite like The Witch. I watched it late. I like The Witch. I found it to be really vague, and I wasn't expecting it to be as vague as it was. And I love the ending. I love the ending of The Witch. I think it's brilliant, and I think that's
I haven't seen it, but I have had it spoiled for
You haven't
me.
seen The Witch?
Mm-mm.
I thought we watched... Oh, I must have watched it by myself here.
Must have been your other bitch.
Must have been your other bride. What do they call it?
Must have been Bug.
Yeah, probably. So...
Bug is Black... What's his name?
Buds for Watu.
Black Stallion. What's his...
What?
Black Stanley. What is the goat's name?
Oh, Black Phillip.
Black Phillip. Bug is Black Phillip.
So yeah, I'm kind of like, it's not always for me. The Northman you loved.
Yeah.
You loved The Northman.
Yeah.
It was maybe your favorite movie that year, 2022.
No, Bones and All.
2022. Yeah, you're right. As you can see, the two share a lot of gothic nature, and
I do love a goth.
you have a type.
Yeah, it's not like scene emo, but it is emo.
Yeah.
And that's all I'll say about that.
So now Nosferatu comes around.
Yeah.
I am excited. Everyone I've liked it. Everyone's liked it. My friends have liked it. Letterboxd has liked it. And this is all the pre-stuff, like before it came out on Christmas. And so, I mean, you can take it from here. Like the opening of Nosferatu, the first half is brilliant.
Yeah.
It is bold. It is some of the great, visuals of all time.
Yeah.
I think
Totally.
in a movie like this.
It kicked off with a boom. What's the phrase I'm trying to find?
It kicked off with an orgasm.
It kicked off with... Did it?
Yeah. She's like...
Oh, yeah, I did. But also kind of violent sexual imagery. Yeah, I really liked Nosferatu. I think it's one of the most interesting, like, feminist kind of takes on the Dracula story, where typically women are the victims or they're just, like, mindless, slaves to him once they become brides or whatever it's called. And this one was different. It just gave our main girl autonomy. It gave her, like, the only power to defeat him, where all the men were just running around like chickens with their heads cut off and fucking corpses and like yelling at her and tying her down. And she's like, if you would let me do my thing for like 1 second, I can fix this for everyone. And then even the confrontation scene was great to me. It was just very interesting and nuanced. There's this like allure of a vampire story with obviously like teenage girls and Twilight, and this idea of being like irresistible to someone that you shouldn't necessarily want to love, but you do. There are a lot of cool things that have always been around the Dracula idea that I think Robert Eggers explored really well. And
And then, like you said, the first half was just like rip-roaring visuals and like atmosphere. And my favorite part was when, everything was just, it just like started at 60 miles an hour.
Yeah,
and my favorite part was when Nicholas Hoult is in the forest and it's just like the most beautiful visual of him in a forest. He's walking through the pathway and the carriage stops. And then he like slides into frame and then wakes up and it's like, it's just
and
great
then it goes through
storytelling.
the mountain pass and then it flies into Dracula's or Nosferatu's castle.
Yeah.
And it's like the greatest.
It's great.
The greatest portion. Actually, that whole Romania, is that where it is? Or?
It's like it's Transylvania.
Transylvania, right?
But it's Romania and Hungary.
The village portion going into the carriage. Well, the village portion going into the sacrifice. The killing of the other vampire, the staking, and then going into the carriage, going into the
that
castle,
whole sequence was fucking
going
great.
into meeting, Count Orlok,
and then having Orlok be like, I think it was really funny and like effective that Count Orlok's just like, and now we are neighbors, and like signs the contract for his soul or whatever it was. It has some humor in it. It was great. And then it got a little muddied. And essentially what I feel the second half did is it just went conventional.
Yes, I could not agree more.
The end climax scene, which could have been equally as visually like interesting and intricate or just like a take on it, it was a bedroom scene. That's okay. But I was expecting so much more, and they went through the whole rigmarole of finding the crazy doctor who's been...
Willem Dafoe.
What's it called?
He's been excommunicated from his whatever.
Yeah. And they're going back to his like weird laboratory, and then he's coming to meet her, and then they're going back to his lab. It was a lot of business without a lot of like forward momentum until they start getting to the like, you have 3 nights to come to me, whatever. And then she's like, all right, I'm ready. Like, come to me. And then he just like shows up as a shadow, and I'm like, really? That's it?
There's 2 halves to this movie, and I know it's like people have talked about 1, 2, 3 acts, but there's a line of demarcation in this movie, probably close to where Willem Dafoe, maybe the second scene of Willem Dafoe and the 3 men, where it just is fully a conventional movie.
Right.
And the first half of that movie is not.
No.
It is telling story through the visuals so much. It's leaving a lot for you to interpret about it. And then the second half just goes like, let me explain to you every single thing that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah, there was just a weirdly large amount of exposition, including the fact that he finds this book, right, from the Count, and he's like, oh, it's in an ancient language, but then he just can read it, and the page he flips to is like, and this is how you defeat Nosferatu. It's like, step 1. Find the lady he's obsessed with. Step 2, let him feed off her. Step 3, the cock crows and the morning comes. It's like, why? How?
And then they have the conversation with her and Lily Rose Depp and Willem Dafoe, where it tells you what's going to happen. It doesn't. There's like a misdirect for the characters in it,
right,
where they go to the castle and he's not there, but the audience knows already. It's been told ahead of time.
Yeah, and I like the scene itself where he goes, like, thank you for your future sacrifice. You're gonna save us all, and like in another world, I think you'd have been a powerful sorceress or whatever.
Isis, yeah.
And she's like, thank you for saying that. And it's a lovely scene, but like then you just go through it. You go through the motions, as opposed to there being like another turn.
Yeah,
it's just you watching what they said is gonna happen.
It is a twofold situation where, like, I did feel like the visuals dropped off and the movie went conventional, and it was just Robert Eggers is the greatest visualist probably of the current crop of filmmakers that we have, and so for it to kind of get stymied by this,
and I also feel like
tough.
For me, the Northman carried it through to the end, although some of it, didn't work maybe story-wise for you. I think for the most part, the creativity was carried through all the way through.
Yeah, that's fair. I think that's fair.
And I personally liked the story. It's been a little bit since I've seen it, so I might have issues now. But from memory, I think it was like kind of a banger all around. And then this one, I think the reason that I'm like so, it's the same thing we always talk about, where it's like the reason that we're so like up in arms about the things we don't like about these movies is because we love parts of these movies.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with like the first 45 minutes of this movie.
Me too. Yeah.
And not to mention like all the performances, all the performers are going 100%. Lily Rose Depp is one of my favorite actresses.
She's amazing.
From The Idol, even though I hated that show, to now, she's like fantastic.
Training as an actor, or I don't wonder if she did ballet. I don't know exactly.
She just has an incredible command over herself.
It's amazing,
movement wise, and also like emotionally. She is so
tapped in.
Yeah, able to turn on a dime from like the first monologue she has, where she's like crying and she's like, it was so awful and I was so happy and like it was amazing. She has a great British accent. Like she's doing it. She's doing her thing. So I think that's why when things are disappointing in a movie like this, it's so disappointing because it's like you were going for it. Like keep going.
It's so close. It's like so close, and so it's even that more frustrating. It's the same conversation. Yeah, we've had on a few of these where it's like, damn, and it comes from a place. I truly feel this. Like it comes from a place of we are always rooting for the movie.
Yeah.
To be as good as it possibly can, and the filmmakers, and so I'm rooting for Eggers almost in this moment to become Stanley Kubrick or something. Like I'm rooting for that moment to happen where it goes like, oh, he is fully arrived.
I root for Emerald Fennell in the same way, where I'm like, she is getting 70-80% there, and then like just missing the landing, and I'm like, no, you were doing so good.
Well, that's why I celebrate someone like Gerwig. Like Greta comes along, and same with Jordan Peele, where when it hits, it's just so satisfying that someone fully realizes their full potential. And I want to be clear, once again, this has some of the greatest visuals I've ever seen in a movie. That makes some of the other decisions a little disappointing. And that's what it comes down to in the end.
And I can't wait to see what's next,
Same,
like
every time.
The Lighthouse doesn't really appeal to me, but I don't know much about it. That's more of a me thing because I just don't love art house. And that is also a me thing because I feel stupid when I watch them, and I don't like feeling stupid. But at the same time, I'm gonna watch it, and I'm excited for his next project. And I love The Northman. I'm gonna rewatch The Northman. It's never the case that like, and it's same with The Complete Unknown, where it's like I'm a huge fan of all of these filmmakers and cast and crew, and like in awe of what they're creating, and I think that they could stick it so well if like they took a big swing,
and that is like we'll wrap it up, but my favorite movies that we've watched this year have been the ones that took the bigger swing, whether or not they were always worked all of the time. Just taking that swing and taking a chance, that is exciting to me. What
do you have an example?
Well, I do, but I think we're going to talk about it on the next episode.
Oh, and that's a teaser. Okay.
Yeah, so really great movies.
Yeah.
I mean, really good.
I love a double feature, and I was never a person before that would watch one movie all the way through, let alone two in one day. So you've infected me. Thank you.
I know you didn't even blink when I offered this up. It was cool.
I offered it up, I'm pretty sure. You were like, let's see A Complete Unknown. And I was like, and then do Nosferatu? And he was like, okay.
I reserved tickets to one and not the other, and I was just like, it sounds good.
And then at the end of that day, he goes, I think I'm done with movies for a little while.
I was pretty, I'm beat up. And
then he just saw
The Brutalist again.
The Brutalist again.
Last night.
So, thank you for watching another double feature episode
Be Mean
of
Fast
Be Mean
Forward.
Fast Forward.
I apologize. We're gonna have a opening thing about talking about the spoilers. We did not have a spoiler-free conversation.
None of our episodes, ever, are spoiler-free. Maybe one day, when we have sponsors and a huge audience and ad breaks, we will do a spoiler-free section and a non-spoiler-free section. But hear me when I say we are not there yet, and we will spoil it from the top. Yeah. Do not watch these episodes unless you've seen the movies.
We just don't
have no intention of seeing the movies.
We don't have the time. I'm sorry. Like, we have to just kind of like get through.
We created this show with the concept of we do this anyway. We already were doing this on our couch to each other, and now there are cameras. So why would we keep it spoiler free? We want to talk about the spoilers. That's what we want to do.
So
and that's our disclaimer. Yeah. And you can put that at the top of the page.
All right. Well, thank you for watching Be Mean Fast Forward. That is A Complete Unknosferatu. I don't think we
What's the next double feature? Do we have one yet?
No, I don't think so.
No.
I'm sure next year there will be inevitably one.
Yeah.
But I want to say, like, as far as this is concerned, Be Mean at the Movies is incredibly difficult to wrap your arms around the movies initially, I think.
Yeah.
And so I want to be clear, they're not always going to be perfect. They're not always going to get to every point, but
no, definitely not.
It's just a feeling that we're getting from it.
Yeah, we just talk about our feelings.
Yeah.
This is therapy. It all started in childhood.
And so, yeah, well, thank you for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.
We'll see you.